Okay, everybody, back with another Gym Life podcast episode. And if you didn't know any better, you'd think we'd already done this 3 times, Isaac and I, trying to
Yeah.
figure this technology out. I think we finally got it figured out. So fingers crossed. Everybody joining me today, of course, doesn't really need an introduction. The beard gives it away. So does the pearly whites from the Canadian friend of mine, Isaac Mays, current Clash on the Coast champion, 3-time Saskatchewan strongest man. And there's more to that resume as well. But Isaac, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah, training's been going pretty good. But obviously, Clash is sneaking up fast. It's a month earlier than last year. So, yeah, it's time to, buckle up the boots and get serious here. So,
Yeah, I guess, right? I mean, you former champ, you can't go into it lightly, that's for sure, especially with that 105 class is arguably one of the toughest classes, although that 90 class, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit because I know you've been keeping your eye on that.
right. Yeah.
There's no bigger show for 105s than Clash. And I talked to Tyler recently, and it is sneaking up on us pretty quick. Uh, no perfect time to get you on the show, I guess, than talk about how you're going to regain the championship.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I mean, yeah, Clash is obviously the best. I mean, the best guys are there regardless of, may not be, world's strongest 105 or whatever, but it definitely brings out the best athletes. So.
Yeah, that's a fact, and it's kind of set up that way for the last couple of years. And as we all know, we hope it continues on because Clash on the Coast certainly has been. It's been sort of the representation of what that 105 class is all about, and it's really nice to see the most athletic and pound for pound, the strongest strongmen on the planet compete at a high level. Because for so long, the super heavyweights obviously have gotten all the attention. And it's just, I mean, not just to mention the 105 class, but the 90 class and 80s class and everybody else. I mean, strongman is a sport now. Everybody should be recognized. And I know the 105 certainly came out of the gate 2 years ago and started really leading the way with, I guess, would you call it sort of a whole new look for strongman?
Definitely, yeah, and I think that's one of the main things about Clash is it really kind of gives us, a platform to display that because, it's not like OSG or the Arnold or something like that where you're only doing one event every, 4, 5, 6 hours, something like that. You're pushing through the qualifiers and then once you get to the final last year it was 5 events in 2 hours. So it really gets us to show that athletic side of us.
Yeah, and I think that isn't recognized enough about Clash because oftentimes we just turn it on to see sort of the final day. But leading up to that, you had 5 events the day prior, so it's like you're essentially doing 2 contests, in that qualifier coming right to the final, right? I mean, it's matter of fact, I don't think there was it a day prior day. I guess it was maybe within 24 hours, right?
Yeah, it was back to back days. And luckily for me, I did well enough in my heat that I was able to kind of take it easy on the last couple events in the heat, which obviously is kind of the big thing about that format is if you can do that and save yourself for the final, but it doesn't always work out that way. So we'll have to see how it goes this year.
Yeah, you're right. That is a variable that's kind of the unknown because if you're pushing yourself through that qualifier, as a couple of those heats did, boy, it could really take a lot of gas out of you getting to that final the next day. And let me tell you, talk about heat. I mean, that was that final was in some heat. I mean, you guys were in the beat of the sun that day in a 2.5 hour show at the pace it was going. Listen, you got to be in shape to do it, else you're just passing out, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. That might be the only benefit of having Clash a month earlier this year is maybe it's a few degrees colder. So
Yeah, yo, you're right about that. You're right about that. So you were talking to me prior to the show that you are a geologist, which I love this, man. The best part about doing this show is when I recognize all the great athletes in our sport and in our community, which I'm a big fan of every single one of you. But I think the best part about doing this show is just seeing the other sides
yeah,
of all these athletes, all these muscle heads, and go, oh my God, he's
yeah.
a geologist. I think that's so cool. Talk to me about that because you do a lot of traveling in that. And I'd be real curious how you stay in shape when you're out in I guess the what would you call it? The wild north of Canada, I guess, is where you're
Yeah,
working.
yeah. Yeah, basically, so I work on a drilling rig, drilling for oil. So I'm kind of a well site consultant, geologist. So yeah, I'm away for as long as the drilling takes. So I'm gone for usually about 4 to 6 days at a time. And then I'm only home for about 2 days at a time when I'm working. So the
Jeez.
way it works is I'm basically training in a small town gym, whatever I can get, the closest gym. Sometimes it's a half-hour drive. And then I'm also working 12-hour shifts as well. So it's a little hard to squeeze in there, but it's not too bad. You kind of suck it up for a few months leading up to a big show, and that's about it. So
Well, I guess rest isn't generally an issue then, because you can find your days where if you just need to give your body a break, it's like, okay, I probably maybe it fits into the schedule well from that point of view, because as we know, the sport can be pretty taxing on the body. But I guess you guys get these gyms in these locations where you can train. I'm just trying to picture it. I mean, I'm sure that strongman fits right into your wheelhouse, because sometimes you're just grabbing something very odd just to try to train with it, aren't you?
yeah, like the small town gym kind of in the general area that I work out at actually isn't that bad. It's called Main Street Muscle and Fitness. So it's a very bare bones, like kind of bodybuilder style gym. Uh, I mean, there's some barbells and a squat rack and some weights and some dumbbells, and that's about it. But I mean, that's all you need to stay in strength when you've been in the sport for I think I've been here for 7 years now. You kind of know all the events. You kind of just got to stay in shape. So,
Yeah, you're right about that. It's just keeping your strength and as far as like say like riding a bike. And I guess it kind of is, right? You come back into it and you find yourself a couple months out of a show, you work some of the implements here and there, but ultimately it's not something that you haven't done before, so it's easy to pick back up on again, I'm sure.
right. Yeah. And one of the nice things about my job is, I'm generally off in the springtime because it's too muddy to move equipment around and stuff like that. So that worked out really good for Clash last year. I was off all of March and April leading up to
Oh yeah.
Clash. So I basically had about 6 or 7 weeks where I was doing nothing but eat, sleep, train, massage therapy, that kind of stuff. It's basically all I did was train for Clash. So.
Yeah, well, listen, that is a distinct advantage. Then, if you're able to do that, right, it's almost like you're living like a pro, being paid to train and that kind of thing, which it fits right into that, like you said, that schedule for Clash. Now we know. See, we're getting to the bottom of something here, because
Yeah.
your performance at Clash. Listen, I was there, and there was obviously it was no easy task winning that show, but I mean, you just are a consistent performer, and just about everything I saw you do. I wouldn't say you really have a weakness. You generally are pretty good across the board with everything. Is that due to some? Do you have a background in athletics? Have you? I mean, you said you've only been doing strongman for 7 years, but you're a super athletic guy. So there doesn't seem to be anything that stands in your way when you're doing strongman right now.
Yeah, I'd say my only weakness is maybe yoke a little bit. It's come up over the last couple of years, but other than that, I like to consider myself pretty well rounded. But yeah, you're right. Like I did football and rugby all through high school and
Okay.
a little bit into college, so that obviously helped. And then obviously with the football and rugby background, I've been weight training since grade 9, so it's I've always been lifting some sort of weights. So.
Side of a natural evolution to where you find yourself now. You saw that stuff you used to do just kind of kept you in that real peak condition. Obviously, rugby. I don't think enough people realize how difficult that sport is. Where did strongman start for you? You said 7 years ago. What led you to the sport and got you in the door?
I was actually bouncing at a bar here in our town on Main Street, and a couple of the other guys that were there happened to be training strongman and stuff like that. And I always like to brag, how much I could bench and stuff like that. And they're like, "Oh yeah, you think you're strong? Like, come try some strongman and stuff like that." And then the rest was history from there. So.
Just fell in love with it like we all do, I think. And I always often say that, if we just get more people to pick up something, some odd object or some stone or some log, before you know it, our sport would probably triple in size over the next 5 years, because you just fall in love with the idea of just doing something different, I think too, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so different. And there's so many different things too, right? Like you might not like one or two events in strongman, but there's 50 others you can do
Right.
that you, so
Yeah, that
yeah,
is a fact, man. That is a fact. There's so many variables too. And I think if you are a guy that likes to challenge himself, or a woman who likes to challenge herself in sport, I hope more people recognize that this sport would be perfect fit for somebody like that. The Canadian contingency, it's been growing and growing. Obviously JF kind of maybe led the way with that. And boy, I hope he's doing all right. That was a horrific injury he had, but of late, it seems like the Canada's back on the rise. I mean, obviously you and Melissa and Holly and obviously Max and Sam, and I mean, I'm naming off champions here, and I'm trying not to miss anybody, but that's quite a contingency of really good, strong people. Where's this all coming from? And is it, are we going to see a lot more from Canada? Are you a big part of that scene up there?
Yeah, it must be, I don't know, it must be something in the water or something, because like
Yeah.
all those names you listed, we don't even really train together. We live so far away, we're so spread out in Canada, but it seems like, as far as strength sports go, just Canadians are getting better and better, and I love to see it. So
It really is, and I think it needs to be said because we're talking about really, real champions here, not just winning the occasional local show. I mean, all of you are on like this national and international platform, which I just think is awesome. I do understand Strongman Corp now is getting a bigger influence in Canada, which I think is great. And it
right,
sounds
yeah,
like
that'll definitely bring up the amateur scene. That helps a lot with those contests and stuff. But JF is also a big part behind it because he runs the pro circuit in Canada. They just actually announced this week that there's already 8 guaranteed pro shows this summer.
oh wow.
So me as a pro and all the other guys, we have the option to go there and compete for a decent amount of prize money, and there's usually a bit of free hotel and meals included too. So that's a lot of stuff that JF does all the legwork behind to kind of keep the pro scene going in Canada.
Yeah, that's really nice. I didn't. I mean, I heard whispers kind of about that. It doesn't really trickle down too much down here, but that seems like a pretty good opportunity. 8 pro shows. How does that work from a class standpoint? Is it open to all classes generally? Is it more open, or do they kind of have more variation to them?
Yeah, so it's strictly open weight class. There's no weight classes. So I was actually fortunate enough to win my heavyweight pro card back in 2018. I won Open Nationals here in Canada. So yeah, it's basically open, no 105 or anything like that. But they'll always take the best guys. Like if there's a few spots, they'll fill them with the top amateurs as well. So
Oh, I love that format. And I loved it down here too. We used to do a lot of pro-am competitions back in the day. And I think Strongman Corp still maybe has a couple of them. I think maybe a Rainier might be one, or Beerstone. But I love that format because it really gives some unknowns and these younger top amateurs an opportunity to compete amongst you guys, that have earned your salt, if you will, when it comes to the strongman community, and kind of gets a lot more people involved in it when we can offer that type of status, right? Kind of out of the gate to compete as a pro-am.
yeah, definitely. And there's a lot on the line up here too. Last I heard, like what they did last year, I'm assuming it'll be the same this year, is if there's, a good amount of pros in the show, if any amateur places top 3, they get their pro card as well.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
that puts a lot on the line and makes guys actually, push themselves. So
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what those pro-ams used to be around here as well. You had a chance to earn your pro card in kind of that one-off event, not nationals, not one of these other pathways. And there's not many. But what I have noticed in Canada is the pro status is really being identified and defined up there, where I think you can honestly say here in the States, it's a bit wishy-washy. Do you kind of agree with that a bit?
yeah, absolutely. Like a pro status up here, it seems like it actually does something. Whereas, in the States, some of the greatest guys down in the US don't even have their pro cards, right? They kind of, you don't really need it, it seems. So yeah, I definitely agree that it seems like, how would you say it? Yeah, there's not really a point in having it, or you don't really know what you actually get when you have your pro status. So
Yeah. Do you prefer it that way? I mean, Isaac, you and I have a lot of opinions on a lot of things, and we're going to touch a couple of those subjects here today, because some we agree on, some we disagree on, but you're a pretty vocal guy when it comes to kind of how you feel about, the way the sport's going because you're so passionate for it. Do you feel like the pro status, albeit you are a pro and you earn the right to call yourself a pro, how would you like to see that kind of change internationally, or is it sort of okay the way it is and allowing pathways, and then some maybe that are closed off only to? And do you have an opinion on that?
yeah, I think it's kind of a tough thing to figure out just because there's so many different organizations and so many different countries with their own federations. And that's kind of where it gets wishy-washy, right? Is whose pro statuses are good under what contests and that kind of thing. So that's kind of why Canada sticks to their own pro system. They have their own pro cards. They get you invites to these specific shows, and that's how it works, right? Is because it's one closed system. Whereas it kind of seems like in the States, there's 2 or 3 different federations with their own pro statuses, and they don't cross over, and then it gets a little confusing.
Yeah, I actually like what's going on up there in Canada with that pro status and being able, like you said, to kind of close it off a little bit. I guess if you took a vote within the strongman community down here, it might be a little bit split, but I think a majority would weigh in favor of having a definitive pro system when it comes to the sport right now. I think we're getting to that point now, and maybe it didn't used to be like that years ago, and it really wasn't, right? I mean, you didn't have a lot of pros, you didn't have a lot of competitors that can really fill a show at any given time. I think we're at that point now where, let's face it, some of these organizations are just going to have to get along, and they're going to have to kind of make a standard set of rules up that would apply to us all to some degree, at least stateside. I mean, Canada's kind of leading the way with the template, but we both laugh about that. Who knows, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's a few years down the road for sure. That would take a lot of legwork anyways.
Yeah, I wish it wasn't. But it's nice we have these qualifiers in the sport. We have these invitationals in the sport. I want to talk about that for a minute because, one of the things you and I kind of went a little bit back and forth online about, just briefly, it was in good respect and with good opinion. And that was the Tamara Wolcott invite to Rogue and in the Arnold Classic and the pro show there. And it was interesting because when I first saw that, and I've said this on my podcast as well, yeah, my immediate response was exactly that. Well, Tamara's not a pro. Then you came in right behind me and gave me your reasons why. And I kind of digested it. I stayed away from it because I felt like it was a knee-jerk reaction. And I really wanted to digest it. So I was, over the next couple of weeks, I thought about it, and I spent some time at the Olympia, and I met Magnus, and which was awesome. And him and I were talking, and he, unknowing to the situation that I was dealing with in my brain, trying to understand whether or not I agreed or disagreed, he said that he was invited to his first strongman competition as a power lifter, and he was an alternate. And I thought that was a great story. One I didn't know, and I thought to myself, yeah, that does it for me. I think I agree with you, and I agree with him that's kind of one of the nice caveats to this sport is these invitationals do allow us to see new athletes maybe that we otherwise wouldn't see in our sport, and maybe they'll fall in love with it, and maybe it'll be the next big thing for them, and maybe we'll see the next Magnus for Magnuson or the next Mitch Hooper for that matter, right? I mean, you had a pretty strong opinion about that too. Do you mind shedding some light on that?
Yeah, exactly. Basically, that's kind of the way I think about it is, it's Rogue's competition. If they want to open a wild card spot and kind of have that dark horse come in, you never know. She could do great. She could do not so great. It's kind of, that's the interesting side of it. But it's also kind of a marketing standpoint on theirs too, because she has more than twice as many of a social media following than any of the other girls as well. So if there's any hope for this sport, you kind of need that social media backing and stuff like that to help market strong man, strong woman, and make it better.
Yeah, I mean, it does help, right? I mean, and it certainly doesn't hurt that, yeah, she's, and I said it on my show the other day, she's still one of the strongest women in the world. I mean, she dead squats, a stupid number, as we both know. It just comes down to the intangibles. And if somebody's coaching her and training her, she could be pretty good. And even if she's not, I wouldn't take back what I said. She still deserves to be there. Again, because it is an invitational. It's Rogue show. And I want to make it clear because I think some people out there, when all that drama came out with the uninvites and the idea that Tamara was there, one really has nothing to do with the other. And I wanted to make that clear that, and I think it just has to be stated once again here that it doesn't. And I thought the fact that she was invited after I got to think about it, yeah, I love it. I really do. And then lo and behold, Luke Davies invites John Hack to the United.
Exactly. I saw that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's funny how that works. Yeah.
It is. And I love it too. And John Hack, boy, he's one of those guys. I'm sure you follow the powerlifting scene a little bit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He might be ready made for this shit. Honestly, God, he might be.
Yeah. Yeah, part of why I was so opinionated about the Arnold thing too was it was just frustrating to see, within the first few days, there was probably 150 comments on that post, and all of it was complaining. None of it was about the $75,000 prize money, the greatest prize money ever in a strong women competition or anything like that. All it was nothing but complaining. So, It's just, sometimes you got to people need to take a back seat and be thankful for, the good side of things rather than just complaining about the bad. Because next thing you know, if Rogue sees there's nothing but negativity, next thing you know, they're going to pull it, or there's going to be less prize money next year. So
No, you're right about that. I think, again, as I stepped back immediately after my first comment, was like, okay, wait a minute, there's more to it than this. And that's another part of it that I think needs to be recognized first and foremost. How awesome is it that Rogue is giving $75,000 away for the women in our sport? I mean, we've been on top of the mountain screaming this for years now. And what we've seen kind of the evolution of this in the last 3 or 4 years, actually 2 years, really. I mean, I don't think you can go back that far. The amount of talent we're seeing on the women's side of things, which, oh, by the way, you're pretty close to that.
yeah.
And the fact that now we're seeing them actually get paid. And hey, listen, that $25,000 Victoria Long one at America's Strongest Woman was not a bad, payday. Unlike Clash, what you guys did last year.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It seems like, all the organizations are kind of competing with themselves. They keep up in the prize money here and there. And I love to see it. It's nothing but growth. So that's all that matters, is growing the sport. And yeah, especially for the women's side of it, they're kind of haven't had as many years, as the men have. So they're slowly catching up. And rightfully so. I mean, they perform well and they're lifting some crazy numbers. So
It's boy, it's hard not to be excited about the women's strong woman. At this point, I used to go, is it strongman? Is it strong woman? Is it women and strongman? I think right now, with the type of talent we see out there, I'm calling it strong woman, and that's what it is for now on, because they've certainly earned that status because they're just amazing.
yeah.
I think you would agree. Matter of fact, I think, and just because I got you on, of course, I think I was watching Melissa yesterday deadlift like 500 for reps or something crazy. I'm like, what am I watching right now? This is just nuts. The amount of power, true pure power that we're seeing out there. That 300 log at Clash, and well, of course, Andrea Thompson did 308, and I think Melissa's not far behind that, and Inez and what she's doing, and obviously all the other classes as well. It's hard to say, or maybe we can argue the women might be more popular than the guys right now in the sport.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Rogue did a good job picking the events. Like, it's definitely going to showcase, obviously, the men and the women because they're doing the same events. But I can't wait to see, the elephant bar deadlift, the log, the wheel of pain. It's going to be some good events, and the women are going to have a lot of fun with it, I think. So.
Well, and I think you're right, and that deserves mentioning, that it is the same events as the men as well, and that gives us kind of that peer through that other looking glass, if you will, and how they kind of compete side by side a bit. Because I thought what Giants did was pretty cool with that
With
what
the
was
team,
it, the
yeah.
country versus country?
Yeah.
That was, where's Canada at in that? You got to get with Giants and say what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I kind of heard rumors at the start that there was going to be something like that, but then I don't know if they just decided to go with two teams or what the whole thing was. But so yeah, there definitely needs to be a Team Canada out there with guys like Maxime and Mitch, and then girls like Mel and Sam, obviously. So there's definitely a good starting roster there, and then obviously if JF ever wanted to come back or something like that. So.
I think it's going to happen. I think they were just sort of beta testing that whole thing for a minute there, just to figure out if they would get the response they did, and it went off without a hitch. I thought it was great. And it was an awesome way to showcase these men and women side by side in our sport, which of course we want to see more of that too. I think that's why I enjoy watching the Clash last year, because we had an opportunity to see that at Clash, a little bit anyhow. As quick as those shows ran, it was nice kind of seeing it back to back like that. I thought that was just another way to kind of showcase the sport in a sort of a smaller sampling size, because sometimes these contests, as we know, they lose their audience simply because they drag on so much, or there's so many weight classes, and it's difficult to see really what's going on from a consumer standpoint if you weren't there cheering somebody on. And that's one of the biggest hangups in our sport, I think. That's why I think these standalones, that's why the Arnold and Clash and some of these other events, I think are so important for the consumerism in our sport.
Definitely, yeah. Like that was one of the main reasons I didn't do OSG this year, is because I mean, other than having a chance at winning the title, it's honestly not that enjoyable of a competition to do. Whereas you go and compare it to something like Clash as a standalone weight class, you're only competing for 4 or 5 hours in a day, and you're getting all 5 events done, and then you're done. It's not
That's
like you're
it.
doing one event and then you're trying to sit around for 6, 7 hours and get ready for the next event, having to warm up every single time, sitting around trying to worry about, are you getting enough food, all that kind of stuff. It's, you go in, you get hyped up, you get it all done, and then you can relax. It's not this kind of up and down of all that.
Yeah,
So
not only from a spectator's point of view, but you're right, from an athlete's point of view as well. You can enjoy the trip a little bit, right? I mean, get the contest out of the
exactly.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's
definitely. And
great.
then obviously, yeah, from a spectator's point, it's way easier, to
Oh
watch.
boy.
It's constant action, and that's the whole reason it was able to be live on ESPN, because he had 5 events in 2 hours. Something that's hard to do, has to run perfectly like clockwork. But I mean, they
Oh
they
boy.
managed to pull it off great last year. So
Yeah, I was behind the scenes there, just hanging out, getting some. Got a picture of you guys as well, and some other people, and just doing some footage stuff. And that part about it, I wish could have been filmed by itself, because the logistics side of that was really amazing in the way they were expediting you guys. I mean, boy, were they moving you, man. I mean, they were moving you guys. You're off and on. You're in that line on the door to come out. It was like 10 minutes between events. Yeah, if you're not prepared for that, you're shitting the bed pretty quick, I'll tell you.
yeah, they basically had a volunteer number for every single one of us athletes as well. So they could basically, they're hounding us nonstop. Hey, you're up in, 3 guys,
Oh,
you're up in
nice.
2 guys, that way they keep it up. And then that way you're on right after, there's no break, nothing for TV or anything like that. They just, they're really on their toes at making sure we were aware and knew when we had to be ready to go. So.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. God, I think that's awesome. But I think too, we're finally at the point in the sport, certainly here stateside, that these standalone events should probably become more common even on the local level, because we have such a deep competitors pool now. And it used to be you opened up every class because you needed to get 30 or 40 people into a show to actually throw a show. I think you can argue nowadays it wouldn't be difficult to throw a single or double class show and still have 50, 60 competitors at a local level very easily. I'd like to see more of that. I guess this is a shout out to all you promoters out there. Speed these shows up a little bit instead of going after every class, throw 2 or 3 shows a year, only featuring 1 or 2 classes, and see how that works. Because I think that might be a good recipe for success.
Yeah, it definitely is more exciting anyway. Like it keeps the athletes more involved rather than just kind of sitting around. And I mean, they get to be the stars of the show when they're the only weight class. So and I mean, even if you have that many, then you kind of do something like the Clash finals where you have qualifiers one day and then the finals the next day or whatever you got to do. But yeah, I definitely think it's a good format to play around with.
Yeah, the template works. I agree. We need to see that replicated a little more by some others as well. I heard that you and Mel took a little trip down to Alabama recently. Was that with Hannah and Thomas down there? Is that true?
Yeah, we were kind of talking about it for a while, and then I just randomly happened to find some cheap flights. So we actually, the cheapest flights I could find, we actually flew into Nashville. So
Yeah,
we stayed in Nashville for a couple days. We trained at Southside Strength there, Adam Dirks' gym there, and
yeah, yeah.
trained with a few of our friends there, Josh Hatfield and Anthony Furman and whoever else were there, and then Hannah and Tommy came and picked us up because they live about an hour and a half south of there. And we went and stayed in the swamp with them and got some training in, got some gun shooting in, got lots of fun in. So,
Hey, I,
yeah.
I think you guys are kind of just you're like in the same family. You just live 2,000 miles apart, is all. I mean, the North and the South come together, and I was just picturing that all the fun you were probably having down there. And listen, after I saw all the pictures on Instagram. I mean, that's just your scene. It's just a little warmer down there, is all.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same kind of lifestyle. It's a little looser down there, but it's and way better weather, obviously. So yeah, it was good to go hang out with them and see their way of life. I mean, they've been bugging us forever to move down there and stuff, but obviously that would be years down the road. But
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
it's definitely
The-
not out of the question.
No, I'm sure it's not. I have a feeling that once you find your folk, you can go anywhere with them, and that's a great thing about this community. More than anything, the greatest thing about this community is the fraternity and sorority, this brotherhood and sisterhood that we have, and this common bond with all of us. Really, I mean, I've yet to meet, And I know there's always these one-offs you don't get along with or you do, but for a majority of the people in our sport, I can sit with any one of them, have a beer, and have a nice evening with them, or get to know them on a personal level and develop awesome relationships with them too. And I've never seen anything like it before in any other factor or any other aspect of my life other than strongman. It's just a very unique a place to be with all these great people.
Yeah, definitely. The only other thing I can compare it to from personal experience is rugby is actually a lot like it. You know, you're out on the pitch, you play a brutal game, and then next thing you know, both teams are drinking with each other in the clubhouse after,
Yes.
regardless of
Yes.
what happened on the field. And that's kind of exactly what strongman's like. You know, you have only maybe 3, 4, or 5 big shows a year that you compete at. So you don't see people from other countries very often, but if you run into them, you know, once or twice a year, you're always willing to, no matter what happened in the competition, you're always willing to sit down and have beer after and party with everyone. So
No, I love that. It's like you never missed a beat either. Even if you haven't seen these people in 6 months, you find them at a show, and it's like you just you never stop talking, and you kind of don't anymore. Social media has opened up that opportunity for us to kind of get into each other's lives a bit and appreciate people from afar and get to know them even, and some friends and some close friends, and keep tabs on them almost every day, like you're waking up with them. So I just think it's awesome. When I heard you were down there, and I know how close Hannah and Mel are. And I just thought, I've talked to Hannah a lot, and she's mentioned Melissa, which, by the way, Melissa, you owe me an interview, darn it. And check your DMs, will you?
sounds good.
But in
I'll
any
let her
case,
know.
yeah, it was always fun listening to kind of her banter about Melissa. And, she sent me, and darn it, I'm still going to do it. You remember that swamp cock t-shirt that she was wearing?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
She
That thing
sent me
is
the
great.
actual photo of that because I said, listen, send that to me. I want to make some t-shirts for that. I think everybody wants those t-shirts. Oh, that was great, man. That was great. But listen, I want to talk about something else because I'm a
Sure.
big outdoors guy myself.
Yeah.
It goes without saying, up in Canada, you're either in the outdoors or you shouldn't live in Canada.
Yeah.
But
Pretty
you do
much.
some
Yeah.
serious hunting and fishing up there, man. I mean, that buck that I saw in that picture recently, that's like trophy. Would you hunt? Did you get that on a trophy ranch, or did you really get that up where you're at? I mean, that's
No.
crazy.
Yeah, no, everything's free range up here, but I don't know if you know, but Saskatchewan holds the record for the biggest typical whitetail, actually, world
No, I did
record.
not know
So,
that. No.
yeah, so yeah, they grow big up here. They have to survive the winters up here, so there's some big animals. So,
God, that thing looks like it dressed out at 250 pounds. It was huge.
yeah, the biggest one I got scored 171, so it's pretty on the bigger side. But I mean, we got everything up here too. The elk, moose, stuff like that is crazy. I spent about 2 weeks hunting moose this year, and we were able to get 2. So that's all I've been eating for my clash prep is moose meat. So
Hey, it's all organic, man. You're killing it. That's high protein. I love that. And a lot of guys, of course, I know, of course, that's who we birds of feather flock together. I love deer hunting as well and getting out there and enjoying that where I'm at here in Michigan, which isn't nearly as good as Saskatchewan, obviously, with what you're killing up there. But yeah, and I saw that big lake trout you took, and I guess that was recently.
yeah, that was right after we got back from Nashville, actually. And believe it or not, it's as far north as you think we are. I actually drove 7 hours north to catch that lake trout. So that
Wow.
was way up north, and it was minus 40 the whole time. And we actually camped on the ice in tents for 3 days. And so
That was a
yeah, it's a lot.
bruiser, bro. That was a bruiser. That was a big fish.
Yeah, so
Unbelievable.
we got a
That's
bit
a
of
lot of
everything.
fun.
Yeah,
Camping on the
absolutely.
ice too. I mean, I guess it's probably 6 foot thick up there. I'm imagining.
Yeah, by the end of the season, it gets I wouldn't yeah, probably about 4 3 4 feet is
Yeah.
but obviously, yeah, the further north you go, like sometimes there's places you can ice fish for 8 months of the year or 9 months of the year because it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know that's a just beautiful landscape up there, and it's an outdoorsman's dream come true. I mean, I know a lot of friends that come into Canada all the time and just go bear hunting and moose hunting and anything else you can think of up there. It's definitely you're roughing it. I mean, it's you're not the I guess it's easy to find deer where I'm at because there's a farm field and a plot of woods. You know,
Yeah.
it's not difficult to know where they're at. Up there, I would
Right.
imagine it's a whole nother ball of wax.
Yeah, there's kind of a joke that some people say that there's there's more big deer in Saskatchewan that have never seen a human before than kind of anywhere else, because there's nothing but bush in the northern half of Saskatchewan, and some of them never come out, and probably never a hunter never sees them. So
Oh boy, I bet you that's so true, man. Yeah, that's probably the truth behind that adage for sure. So, we talked a little bit about your time, or at least we did till we got cut off on when we tried to pull this off last time. But you were talking about not doing a whole lot this year outside of Clash from last year, huh?
yeah, so that was mostly to do with work. I kind of just fit in whatever I can. So I actually competed at Western Canada's Strongest Man. That was an open show, and I didn't really have time to train for that. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it, and then it just happened that it lined up on my 2 days off of work. So I jumped in last minute, and I got fourth, so it wasn't terrible. But and
No, and
that's
you went
always
into
the
the
great.
heavyweights too, right? It was an
Right,
open
yeah.
show.
Right,
Okay.
yeah. So, and that's always a great contest to do because it's right on Canada Day, right in front of the legislative building on in our home city here. So there's about at least 500 to 1,000 spectators at all times. So it's more of a, I kind of just did it for the spectators,
Yeah.
and then the only other show I did was they also hosted a Western Canada's Strongest 105, so I was able to win that one a couple weeks later. So.
Oh, nice, nice. So yeah, that's cool. Then you guys are getting enough, I guess, participants in these classes. That goes without saying. I guess a lot of us take it for granted that or don't expect there to be a huge contingency of athletes to fill a class like that on that level. But it sounds like you guys are doing just fine.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of competitions up here and lots of people that like to compete as well. So, I mean, sometimes like it's not uncommon to see you compete back to back weekends just for the sake of doing it, for the fun. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, the only big one I missed was Saskatchewan Strongest Man. I missed that one again. So I missed my chance at winning it a fourth time. But
4 times in a row. That's what happened
so,
there? Why didn't you
yeah,
make it?
so,
Work?
just because of work. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
simply. Yeah. So,
Yeah, that
yeah.
would have been nice to have 4 in a row. Now you're just gonna have to come back, like and win it
Yeah.
now next year.
Yeah,
Makes
if
for
it
some good
lines up
drama anyhow. They'll probably beef it up.
right, exactly. So,
So
yeah.
what is your walking weight, by the way?
Right now I'm about 245. I try to get up just over 250, and that's kind of where I'm at my peak. And then I just water cut that all for under
So when you're
105.
going into some of these open shows for fun, your walking weight's pretty good then, 250 ish, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The heaviest I've ever been is 265. So, yeah.
Wow,
So
that's a lot of weight
I
because you're a
get
taller
big,
guy
but
though,
not
aren't you,
too
Isaac?
big.
Are you about 6 foot tall?
Yeah, just under 5'11. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I thought so.
so
Yeah, that's a good athletic weight for you too. I mean, you're able to compete at a pretty high level anyhow, and then you add that weight to you. I bet you just feel like a monster when you're 260 walking around.
yeah, it definitely helps. I mean, to a certain extent, weight helps move weight as long as it's the right type of body weight, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But obviously, in the 105s, it totally depends on the show. I mean, like when you compare Clash to something like OSG, it's for Clash, you definitely want to have better cardio and maybe be a little on the lighter side just for recovery's sake and stuff like that. So, I definitely don't want to get any bigger than 250 for Clash anyway. So,
and you'd make a real gradual cut down to that. Then it sounds like you're on that path right now.
Basically, I hate dieting. So basically, I try to water cut it all. So I will cut carbs for 2 or 3 days just because carbs hold water. So I'll cut carbs for 2 or 3 days, and then I'll water load, do a 5-day water load where you're drinking excessive amounts of water. And then I'll cut water and food for, 18 hours or 24 hours and just sweat it all out. So,
I mean, just a pretty baseline kind of thing cut that you do. It's not, I guess, compared to some,
yeah,
I
it's
should say.
Yeah, it's pretty much just a basic, at the same cut, a wrestler would do, or a power lifter, or a
Yeah.
boxer, anything like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of
And
the
I mean,
nature of your class a little bit. That cut is, the more I talk to guys, it makes sense. Listen, it really does. Because you guys come in so athletic, when you hit your weight, that you almost need to have that sort of clerk surplus as you're kind of getting ready for this show, with the way that you're probably preparing for it. Like you said, athletically, it just adds a whole different facet to getting ready for a strongman competition, where as quick as that show moves, I'm guessing you're into some real hit programming. Is that kind of what you follow a bit?
Yeah, like obviously, I don't know if you knew, but Terry Rady's programming me. He's been programming me
Okay.
for programmed me for Clash last year. That's when I first hired him. I
Yeah.
basically gave him, 3 or 4 months to get me ready for Clash, and obviously it worked. So I've been working with him nonstop since. And yeah, it's definitely you kind of get your first couple events done in your programming, and then after that, it's a lot of volume and stuff like
Right.
that to kind of just keep you in shape and get the blood flowing and make sure that you can recover.
Yeah, no, Terry's a great coach. We all know that. Reputation precedes him, works well with everybody, and he's a little eccentric too, which is fun. So there you go.
Yeah,
Oh man. Well, listen, man, I appreciate having a conversation with you today. It's been one I've been wanting to have for some time, and I know we'll stay in touch because I look forward to meeting you in person this year at Clash when I'm out there and having a beer with you this time. And hopefully we can have some of these in-depth conversations that I know we want to have too, because I appreciate your insights and your opinion on a lot of stuff in strongman, and I think a lot more people need to follow you. And oh, by the way, let me put up your Instagram because I got carried away chatting with you. I want to make sure everybody knows where to find you. Is that it?
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Max Out Maze.
I'll be helping out at the Arnold, not competing, and then obviously I'll be competing at Clash. So hopefully I run into lots of people, and yeah, I'm always down to have a chat with whoever. So
Yeah, no, that's right. The Arnold too. I forgot. Of course she'll be there. That makes complete sense. So that's actually what day is the Clash? Did you get the date on that? I didn't get it.
Clash, yeah, it's March 24th to 26th.
Yeah. Okay. So you got some traveling that month. So yeah, I'll
Yeah.
actually see you at the Arnold before we'll see you at Clash. So it'll work.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. And that'll maybe be a little bit more fun because you won't be, you just be hanging out and volunteering, and I can get more beer down you that way. So
Yeah, I kind of enjoy it sometimes. It's nice to see everyone and talk and
yeah.
not have to focus on, being all hyped up and having to perform. It's kind of just get a let
Yes.
loose and help out Mel, and she's got to worry about it. So,
Well, you get that a lot more often than a lot of guys do, obviously, because Mel's been pretty active in most competitions. I know she was hurt for a while, and I understand now that she's okay, but that's got to kind of be fun. I guess a fun caveat to all this when you've got another strong person in your life, and you can go to these other events and not necessarily have to be the athlete, but more the handler, so to speak.
yeah. Yeah. Or the bag bitch, as she likes to call
The
me.
bag
But
bitch. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
yeah.
That's the word.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's definitely nice to help out and, not that way you're not really feeling the pressure. You're just kind of there to help out
Yeah.
and get to see things from a different viewpoint. So,
Yeah, for sure, and that would be a great way to spectate the sport as well, and being there with somebody else and rooting them on. So, but yeah, I think that's awesome, man. We'll have to get Thomas involved. I know Thomas and Hannah, of course, will be up there, and I love those guys as well. They're two good friends of mine.
yeah.
So, we'll have to. Well, anyhow, we'll make that work at the Arnold. So get ready for that. I'll be hitting you up before we get down there, find out where you're at and what you're doing and all that good stuff. But in the meantime, man, yeah, keep training hard because I'm expecting you to repeat this year at Clash. And I made a comment the other day on my show. We need our champions, bro, and we want guys and gals to fight for that podium every time. And I love it when we get two or three repeats out of somebody because the whole world gets talking about it. And that's what we want for our sport. So keep training hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me and thanks for the encouragement. And definitely, I'm feeling good for Clash. So hopefully I can pull together a nice another run here. So we'll see how it goes.
And I hope next year you get down here a little bit more often and get involved in some other competitions because I'm hearing some good ones are coming down the pipe. And I imagine you're just kind of waiting to see how everything unfolds for the year. Or do you have already something else you pegged to do?
Not really. I heard there's maybe rumors of a actual Canada's 105 this year, which would be nice because that's never really been decided before. I mean, we have an amateur nationals every year, but I don't compete in that. So it's kind of just, it'd be nice to have like an official Canada's 105 with the odd pro in it and then all the amateur guys and have it decided for once. So.
Yeah, I got you. No, that would be great. And then get Saskatchewan strongest man back. And it sounds like you got a full schedule already. So
Yeah, there's definitely lots out there. So I'll be trying to do everything I can. So.
Well, I look forward to seeing you out there in Canada or other, but certainly at the Arnold. So Isaac Mays, thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. All right.